A middle-aged white man with a racist attitude slapped a young black woman without reason, only to be stunned when she punched him back. Maya, a young black woman, had just finished her shift after a long day at work and stopped by the supermarket to pick up a few essentials. It was a Saturday evening, and the parking lot was packed with people hurrying to get their weekend shopping done. After circling around looking for a spot, Maya finally found an open space near the entrance. She happily pulled into the spot, carefully aligning her car between the lines. Before she could even step out, she heard the screech of tires right next to her. A white SUV aggressively pulled in, stopping just inches away from her car. Maya looked up and saw a middle-aged white man sitting in the car, his face flushed, his eyes filled with tension and anger. He rolled down his window and pointed at her, his sharp tone catching her off guard. "That spot was mine!" he yelled, his voice full of frustration and resentment. Maya was slightly taken aback by the stranger's abrupt rudeness. She tried to remain calm and responded politely, her voice steady but firm. "Sorry, but I didn't see anyone waiting here," Maya explained, trying to clarify. The man didn't ease up. Instead, he opened his car door and walked right up to Maya's car, blocking her way out. His eyes were piercing, filled with contempt and anger, as if her very presence was an insult. "Don't make excuses," he sneered, his face twisted in disdain. "You people are always like this, pretending not to see anything and doing whatever you want. No respect for others." Maya could hear the cold, unfamiliar tone in his voice, a hint of racism that she had faced before, but had never stopped hurting. She tried to keep her discomfort in check, took a deep breath, and thought she might be able to calm his anger and go about her day. "I'm truly sorry if you were waiting, but I didn't see anyone here," Maya said, trying to keep her voice calm, hoping he would listen. But her words had no effect. The man continued to glare, arms crossed over his chest, looking at her with a mocking gaze. "Of course you didn't see. You people never pay attention to anyone else, do you?" He sneered, his words laced with prejudice and disdain. At that moment, Maya realized that to this man, the issue was no longer just about a parking spot. He stood close, his aggressive, domineering stare making her feel cornered. She could feel his angry breath on her face, his cold, contemptuous eyes drilling into her, as if she were an intruder, someone unworthy of being there. Maya tried to stay calm, even as her heart began to beat faster. She had often encountered situations where strangers treated her as though she didn't belong in places they considered theirs. She knew what would happen if she let her anger take over, so she restrained herself, breathing deeply to maintain control. "Come on, I don't want any trouble. We're just talking about a parking space here," Maya said, keeping her voice steady even though she felt shaken inside. But the man only grew angrier, as if each of her calm words made him even more furious. He stepped closer, eyes full of challenge and contempt, finger jabbing toward her chest as if trying to intimidate her. Without a hint of restraint, he shouted, "Who do you think you are to speak to me like that?" His voice was full of menace. "I'm sick and tired of your kind's arrogance. You people think you can do whatever you want without caring about anyone else." His words hit Maya like a blow to her self-esteem. The contempt in his words was not just directed at her, but also at her entire community. "You people." Those two words carried a racist tone that made Maya feel marginalized, disrespected because of her skin color. Maya wanted to move away from him, but he blocked her car door, forcing her to face him. The people around them began to notice the argument, a few standing by to watch, but none stepping forward to help. Maya looked around, feeling trapped under the gazes of the crowd and the intimidation of the man before her. She kept her voice composed, though turmoil brewed inside. "I'm really sorry if you've been waiting, but I didn't see any car waiting here," Maya said, hoping that another explanation might diffuse the tension. But her words didn't calm him down. Instead, he grew even more furious. His angry eyes burned with rage, and he spat out each word with a tone of sarcasm and hatred. "Of course you didn't see. You people never pay attention to others, do you?" At that moment, Maya realized that trying to explain was pointless. This man wasn't looking for an apology or an explanation. He just wanted to assert his power and make her feel small. Although her heart was racing in her chest, Maya told herself to stay calm and maintain the small distance left between them. She was about to turn and walk away to avoid unnecessary conflict, but just as she turned, a hard slap from the man struck her like lightning. The sudden, violent slap whipped her head to the side. Her cheeks stung, and the pain from the blow seared through her face. Dazed, she stood still for a few moments, trying to regain her balance. The man took a step back, looking at her with a smug expression, as if he had just performed an act of justice. He smirked, his eyes gleaming with open contempt. To him, she was just an inferior person who deserved a lesson. But for Maya, that slap was not only physically painful, but also deeply hurtful to her pride. She no longer felt fear. She felt nothing but insulted and angry. Without thinking further, Maya raised her hand and slapped him back. Not as hard, but enough to show him she wouldn't take it lying down. Her action was a warning, a response that made it clear she would not quietly endure this undeserved humiliation. Her slap was not meant for revenge, but was a natural reaction to having her pride trampled upon. The man was stunned, his eyes wide with surprise mixed with anger. He looked at her with horror as if he couldn't believe she had dared to fight back. The crowd began to murmur, eyes fixed on the two of them, some pulling out their phones to record the scene. He took a step back, his hand on his cheek where she had slapped him, his face paling, his voice seething with rage. "How dare you hit me? Who do you think you are?" Maya stood there, her hand clenched to keep herself calm, even though she was boiling inside. The man in front of her continued to curse, hurling harsh words at her. She could feel the malice in his eyes, the disdain in every word he said. In that moment, Maya knew she had to leave. She didn't want the confrontation to escalate, but inside, she was still reeling from the man's senseless hostility. His unprovoked attack and racist words had left Maya feeling not just like a victim of a parking dispute, but like a victim of a prejudiced and discriminatory mindset. She turned to walk away, leaving behind the man's hateful gaze. But she knew that the pain and humiliation from that slap would linger with her for a long time. Maya stepped into the supermarket, trying to keep calm and reminding herself that she was only there to pick up a few essentials and leave. She gripped her shopping basket, taking a deep breath, but the echoes of the parking lot altercation still reverberated in her mind. She picked up a few essentials, some vegetables, milk, bread, trying to push away negative thoughts, but still feeling a heavy weight inside. She could feel the eyes of the people around her, though she wasn't sure if they were actually looking at her. The man's racist words echoed in her mind, intensifying her frustration and helplessness. How could someone believe they had the right to assault and insult someone just because of their skin color? Once she had everything she needed, Maya walked out of the supermarket, her heart heavy, but telling herself that things would eventually pass. But as she approached her car, she noticed something wasn't right. Her heart sank when she saw long, deep scratches running along the side of her car, as if someone had deliberately taken a sharp object and dragged it along the shiny paint. Maya stood there, feeling a wave of anger and frustration welling up inside. She didn't need to think twice to know this was the handiwork of the man from earlier. Feeling both helpless and angry, Maya wanted to cry. Parking in that spot was just a coincidence, but it had led to her being attacked, insulted, and now facing property damage. Her car wasn't an expensive item, but it was the result of years of hard work. Now it had been vandalized simply because of the baseless hatred and prejudice of a stranger. Maya took a deep breath, trying to control her emotions and think logically. She knew that calling the police might complicate things, but looking at the deep scratches on her car, she knew she couldn't just let this go. The scratches weren't just a material loss, but a symbol of the injustice and discrimination she had just endured. Determined not to let this slide, Maya took out her phone and called the police. She gave a brief report of the incident in the parking lot, her voice trembling but resolute. She emphasized that she had been attacked without provocation, her property damaged, and that the man was still nearby. After hanging up, Maya looked around to locate the man. She spotted the white SUV parked not far away, and through the window she could see the man still sitting inside, watching her with a smug smile. He made no effort to hide, seemingly daring her, finding amusement in her distress. While waiting for the police, Maya stood by her car, trying to stay calm despite her inner turmoil. She knew this was no longer just a dispute between two people, but her fight for the fairness and respect she deserved. After a few tense minutes, the sound of police sirens came from afar, and Maya felt a sense of relief when she saw two police cars pull into the parking lot. Their presence made her feel safer, as if she finally had someone to support her, someone who could help clarify this unfair situation. As the officers stepped out of their cars, Maya quickly approached them and began to recount everything. Her voice was still shaky from the emotions, but she carefully described the details from the moment the middle-aged man aggressively approached her to the moment she discovered the scratches on her car. She also pointed toward the white SUV where he still sat, seemingly indifferent to what he had caused. One officer listened to Maya intently, taking notes on every detail, while the other officer approached the man to talk to him. Maya watched their every move, feeling a mixture of hope and worry. Although she was trying to stay calm, she couldn't help but think about the possibility that he might twist the story, blaming her as he had done from the start. She knew that in situations like these, prejudice could sometimes obscure the truth. When the police officer approached the man, he immediately changed his attitude, raising his voice in complaint, pretending to be the victim who had been attacked without reason by a young woman. He repeated that Maya was the aggressor, that he had only reacted in self-defense, trying to turn the story into one where he was the one protecting himself. His blatant lies shocked and angered Maya, but she tried to stay quiet, letting the police make their own judgment. The officer returned and asked Maya a few more questions about the argument and the moment he slapped her. Maya recounted everything clearly, explaining each event and carefully emphasizing that she had tried to walk away, but he wouldn't leave her alone. She described his slap and how she had only slapped back lightly to defend herself. The officer nodded, looked over at Maya's car, examining the scratches that marked the vehicle's body, a piece of undeniable evidence of the intentional damage he had caused. The presence of these scratches was the most persuasive proof of Maya's story, a part of the truth he could not hide no matter how much he lied. Maya silently watched as the officer returned and exchanged a few words with his colleague. They lowered their voices, exchanged quick words, occasionally glancing at the man standing by his SUV. Finally, they walked up to him, and one of the officers gestured for him to turn around. Maya's anxiety began to lessen as she saw the police handcuff the man and lead him toward their car. The man yelled in protest, shouting at Maya with venomous words, insisting she would pay for this, that she couldn't get away with treating him this way. But the officers ignored him. They put him in the back seat, ignoring his shouts, and closed the door. His voice was muffled, but his hateful gaze still glared through the car window, making Maya feel a wave of anger and unease rise once again. Maya stood still, feeling both relief and exhaustion. She knew this wasn't over yet. He would likely continue to place the blame, twisting the story in his favor during the investigation. But for now, she felt that justice was finally on her side. An officer approached her, his voice reassuring. "We have enough evidence to continue with the case. Would you like to file a formal complaint to set things straight?" Maya nodded firmly. "Yes, I want to follow through. He can't get away with this." She watched the police car as it drove away, taking the man out of the parking lot. Though she felt a sense of relief, a quiet pain lingered. Maya knew the road ahead would not be easy, and many challenges awaited her, but this time she would not back down. After the police car carrying the man disappeared from the parking lot, Maya was invited to the police station to officially provide information and report the incident. Sitting in a small room, she felt as though everything was engulfed in tense silence, as if her peaceful life had been disrupted by the deep-seated prejudices she had always hoped to avoid. While she tried to remind herself that she had done the right thing, Maya couldn't help but worry. An officer sat across from Maya, one who had witnessed the final moments of the confrontation in the parking lot. He handed her a sheet of paper and a pen, asking her to write down the entire incident. Maya took a deep breath, trying to recall every detail, every word and action, especially the moment when the man, Mr. Smith, assaulted and insulted her. She wanted everything to be recorded accurately, leaving nothing out that could be twisted or overlooked. As Maya wrote, the memories of what had happened replayed in her mind, each detail reminding her of the injustice and hostility she had endured. Every word she wrote was a clear testament to the unfairness and hatred she had faced. Maya knew that from the moment he slapped her, he would try everything to turn her into the aggressor and present himself as a victim. She even feared that prejudice and bias might distort the truth, but she was determined to bring the truth to light. When Maya finished her statement, The officer read it carefully, occasionally looking up to clarify a few details with her. He wanted to ensure every point was clear, as he knew the man would try every way to twist the facts. Maya recounted each event calmly, from his aggressive approach to her car, to his offensive words, the slap, and the scratches on her car. After hearing the entire story, the officer sat a bit closer, looking at her with empathy. He understood that this wasn't simply a dispute over a parking spot, but an issue of dignity, of the right to fair treatment, and of a conflict that no one should have to endure. As their conversation continued, another officer entered with a serious expression. He informed them that Mr. Smith had denied Maya's entire story, even claiming that she was the one who attacked him first. The man insisted that he had only defended himself against her rudeness and claimed she had slapped him first. He was trying to construct a narrative completely contrary to the truth, casting himself as the victim. Upon hearing this, Maya couldn't help but feel a surge of anger and frustration. How could someone create such a false story after everything he had done? However, she quickly regained her composure. She understood that facing these lies was part of the long battle she was stepping into. With a calm but determined voice, she responded, "No, he was the one who attacked me first," Maya said, her eyes full of resolve. "I only defended myself when he crossed every boundary, not just with his actions, but also with his words. This isn't just about a parking spot. It's about the way he saw me as someone beneath him, simply because he wanted to." The officer nodded, looking at Maya with a serious expression. "We've examined the scratches on your car, and with what you've told us, we have enough grounds to take action against him for assault and property damage. However, to strengthen the evidence, we'll need to determine if there were any witnesses nearby. Do you remember if anyone saw what happened?" Maya tried to recall, picturing the people present in the parking lot at the time. She remembered a few people stopping to watch, but no one intervened. "I'm not sure if anyone recorded it," she said softly, "but there might be security cameras in the parking lot. If we can access them, I think there will be clear evidence." Hearing this, the officer agreed and mentioned that they would contact the supermarket management to check the security footage. "This might take a little time," he said, "but if there's evidence, it will be very useful to ensure the truth is revealed." The certainty in his voice brought Maya a sense of relief, though worry still lingered in her heart. She understood that, with or without evidence, Mr. Smith might still try to twist the story. His blatant lies were proof of that. But Maya reminded herself she couldn't give up. This was her chance to stand up for herself and prove the truth, and she would do everything she could to hold her ground. Before leaving the police station, the officer handed Maya a copy of her statement. He also mentioned that she might need to return to provide additional information or identify witnesses if needed. As she stepped out of the police station, Maya felt the air outside a bit more open, though the trauma and resentment from the confrontation still weighed heavily in her heart. Even though everything wasn't fully resolved, Maya promised herself she would see it through to the end. This was no longer just about protecting herself in a disagreement, but about reclaiming justice for herself and for others like her. This time, she wouldn't let prejudice and injustice force her to remain silent. This time, she was determined to fight, no matter how challenging the road ahead might be. A few days later, Maya received a call from the police, informing her they had gathered enough evidence to officially arrest Mr. Smith. The key piece of evidence was the security footage from the parking lot, capturing everything clearly, from the moment he approached her car aggressively to his verbal abuse, and, most notably, the moment he slapped Maya without any justifiable reason. The video also showed Maya standing calmly, trying not to engage, making it evident that she only slapped him back in self-defense. Upon hearing this from the police, Maya felt a wave of relief mixed with gratitude. The truth had been captured, and this time, she no longer had to endure the lies alone. Yet a lingering sense of worry stayed with her. She knew this was just the beginning, and Mr. Smith would likely try to fight back, painting himself as the victim, just as he had before. But this time, she would see it through to the end. The next morning, Maya was asked to come to the police station to complete the legal procedures. She walked into the reception area, where officers had prepared documents for the case. One officer, who had been assisting her since the start, approached her, explaining the next steps in detail. He also informed her that Mr. Smith would be taken into custody that day to formally confront the charges of assault and property damage. Not long after, Maya was invited to sit in a small meeting room to wait. As the minutes ticked by, her emotions were a mix of anxiety and determination. She reminded herself she was strong enough to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She had endured the shock, the unjust humiliation, and now she was going to defend her honor to the end. A few minutes later, Mr. Smith was escorted into the room by officers, his hands cuffed. Seeing him, Maya noticed that his eyes were still full of contempt and hostility. Despite his vulnerable position, he looked at her with defiance, his cold gaze blaming her entirely. As soon as he saw her, he began shouting, hurling insults. "You set me up, you liar!" Mr. Smith yelled, his face red and his eyes glaring. "You'll pay for this! Who do you think you are to do this to me?" Maya looked at him, calm and steady, unaffected by his hateful words. She said nothing, maintaining a direct gaze as if to say he no longer had any power to threaten her. Maya's composure seemed to enrage Mr. Smith even more. He struggled, loudly asserting that he was the victim and that Maya had orchestrated everything. However, the officers, well aware of the situation, didn't let him continue his harassment. One officer, standing beside Mr. Smith, instructed him to keep quiet, emphasizing that everything had been thoroughly investigated and that he would be held accountable for his actions. Confronted with the officer's firmness, Mr. Smith had no choice but to stay silent, though his eyes still burned with resentment and a stubborn refusal to accept the reality. Maya sat watching, and for the first time, she clearly saw the helplessness in his eyes. Before, Mr. Smith had always been confident he could escape any consequences, that he had the power to manipulate and twist the truth as he pleased. But now, the truth was undeniable. Maya felt a sense of justice taking shape as she saw his arrogance and invulnerability stripped away. At that moment, an officer entered the room to deliver the final decision. Mr. Smith would be temporarily detained, awaiting his preliminary hearing. Hearing this decision, he yelled even louder, threatening to sue Maya and drag her down, ensuring she would pay. But this time, his threats were weak and held no weight. Maya remained seated, watching him as if looking at a stranger. The officers led him out, leaving Maya sitting alone with a sense of peace and resolve. An officer approached her, handing her a business card and advising her to reach out any time if she needed further assistance during the legal process. He also encouraged her to take the case to court to ensure justice was served. "We will do everything we can to protect you and the truth," the officer said calmly, his eyes reflecting deep empathy. "Thank you," Maya replied firmly. "I'll see this case through to the end." As she stepped out of the police station, Maya felt the outdoor air refreshing, as though she had just weathered a great storm. She felt a lightness within her, as if she had set down a burden she had carried for so long. Yet her mind still dwelled on the challenges ahead. Maya knew that this journey wasn't entirely over. There would be further steps, legal procedures, and confrontations with Mr. Smith at trial. She also understood that Mr. Smith, with his hostility and arrogance, wouldn't back down easily. He would likely continue to resist, perhaps hire a lawyer to defend himself, or find any way to escape punishment. But for Maya this time, she had made a clear decision. She wouldn't let anyone intimidate her or force her into silence. This was no longer just a personal dispute, but a stand for self-respect, for the right to live equally and justly. Looking ahead, Maya knew there were still many challenges waiting. But with her faith in justice and the power of truth, she walked forward with confidence and determination, ready for whatever lay ahead. Several weeks later, Maya received a notice about Mr. Smith's trial. Her determination to pursue the case stemmed not only from a desire to protect her own dignity, but also from a drive to fight for justice, so that people like Mr. Smith would understand that prejudice and hatred cannot go unpunished. During the wait, Maya frequently met with attorneys and prepared her testimony. The video recording of the confrontation in the parking lot and the evidence of her car's damage gave her motivation, as she knew these would be undeniable pieces of evidence. Yet anxiety continued to linger. She wondered if justice would truly side with her. Maya knew that racial discrimination cases were not always easy, and that the truth did not always prevail. But this time, she would not back down. On the day of the first trial, Maya entered the courtroom with a tension that was hard to describe. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with anticipation as everyone watched every move closely. Mr. Smith sat on the opposite side, his face cold, his eyes full of defiance. Beside him was his defense attorney, a middle-aged man with a calm and sharp demeanor. Maya could clearly see the thorough preparation of the opposing side, but she also felt the reassurance her lawyer gave her through a steady, determined gaze. The trial began with the opening statement from the prosecution. Maya's lawyer, a sharp young woman named Ava Hayes, presented the case succinctly and in detail. She summarized Mr. Smith's actions from his attack on Maya, his racial slurs, to his destruction of her property. In a confident voice and with a firm attitude, Ava pointed out that Mr. Smith's actions were neither random nor a misunderstanding, but a series of hostile, clearly motivated acts. Your Honor, my client, Ms. Maya, simply parked in an empty spot, but that simple action led to a series of insults, threats, and violence from the defendant, Ava said with calm but strong determination. This case is not just about a parking spot. It's a clear example of racial discrimination and the abuse of power by an individual attempting to demean and intimidate someone simply because of the color of their skin. Mr. Smith sat across the room, keeping a stoic face, though his eyes showed resentment. When it was the defense's turn to speak, Mr. Smith's lawyer attempted to paint a different picture. He described Mr. Smith as a man having a bad day, a husband and father under a lot of stress, arguing that the incident was simply an impulsive reaction. The defense attorney even appealed to the jury's compassion for the defendant, asking them to consider his circumstances. Maya felt her heart tighten. She listened as the opposing attorney depicted Mr. Smith as a sympathetic figure, though she knew well his hostile and arrogant nature. This only strengthened Maya's resolve, as she knew she needed to stand up not just for herself, but to show others that abuse and discrimination would not be tolerated. The trial continued with the presentation of evidence. The surveillance footage from the parking lot played in court, showing Mr. Smith approaching and slapping Maya without warning, then vandalizing her car. The video left the courtroom in silence. Even some jury members showed clear discomfort at Mr. Smith's aggressive behavior and unreasonable attitude. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she stepped up with calmness and courage. She recounted the entire incident, from parking her car, being insulted, attacked, and finally witnessing her car being damaged. Her voice trembled slightly, but was steady. Maya emphasized that she only retaliated after being attacked, that Mr. Smith's actions were not a random burst of anger, but a display of contempt and deep-seated racism. During the cross-examination, Mr. Smith's lawyer tried to argue that he merely reacted out of anger and claimed that Maya had provoked him. However, through her calmness and sincere explanations, Maya clarified that she had no intention of causing conflict and was merely defending herself. After the first day ended, Maya returned home exhausted but full of hope. She knew she had done her best, had spoken the truth, and hadn't allowed herself to be suppressed. This was just the first day of this fight, but she felt a sense of relief knowing she had stood up for herself. She believed that through her story, people like Mr. Smith would gradually come to understand that hatred and discrimination would no longer be tolerated, and that those treated unfairly would always have the right to defend their dignity. She knew the upcoming days would bring more challenges, but this time, she was ready to await the verdict of justice. After several days of intense trial, the court finally reached the closing arguments. Maya's lawyer, Ava Hayes, stepped forward with her usual sharpness and calmness, but spoke with a stronger tone, showing deep determination. She laid out each point clearly, emphasizing Mr. Smith's violent actions and his discriminatory attitude, reminding everyone that this was not just a trivial argument, but evidence of abuse and disrespect toward another human being. We are discussing an act that is simply unacceptable, fueled by hatred and arrogance, Ava told the jury. Mr. Smith not only attacked my client physically, but also her dignity, her right to live equally. This is something we cannot allow in a fair and equal society. The defense attorney continued to appeal for compassion from the jury, arguing that Mr. Smith was under pressure and acted on impulse in that situation. The lawyer even suggested that Maya's slap should also be considered an act of aggression. Hearing these arguments, Maya felt a mix of anger and frustration. Though she had explained clearly that her action was solely in self-defense, Mr. Smith still tried to spin the story in his favor, portraying himself as the victim. Finally, the jury left the room to deliberate and reach a verdict. Maya sat quietly in the courtroom, her mind swirling with emotions. She thought about everything she had been through during this process, from the pain of being attacked to the relentless fight to be heard. Now, everything was out of her hands. She could only hope that justice would prevail. After what felt like the longest wait of her life, the jury returned to the courtroom. The tension in the room was palpable, and everyone held their breath. When the jury declared Mr. Smith guilty on the charges of assault and property damage, Maya could hardly believe her ears. Relief and a sense of liberation flooded her heart. Justice had been served, and she was protected. Mr. Smith sat in shock, his face darkening. He appeared unable to believe the verdict, but this time he could no longer threaten or deny. He had been convicted, meaning his actions would have consequences. As the trial concluded, Maya stood up, feeling as though she had shed a tremendous weight that had pressed down on her shoulders for so long. She didn't feel the joy or satisfaction she once imagined, but rather a sense of emptiness mixed with sadness. She realized that although she had won a legal victory, the wounds Mr. Smith had inflicted wouldn't heal easily. The prejudice and hatred he displayed couldn't be erased with a single sentence. Leaving the courthouse, Maya paused on the steps, feeling the sunlight and a gentle breeze. She knew she had done everything she could, yet couldn't shake the feeling that this battle was far from over. Racism, unfounded prejudice, and people like Mr. Smith might still exist, spreading hatred to others. She understood that the fight for justice and compassion would always need courageous people to stand up, not just for themselves but for others. A woman approached her, taking her hand with eyes full of empathy and admiration. "You were so brave, Maya. You did something many people wouldn't dare to do," she said sincerely. Maya smiled, knowing she had contributed, even if just a small part, to this long battle, even though she couldn't change the whole world. Looking into the distance, Maya reminded herself that although this journey had reached its legal end, there was still much for her to do. Justice had been served, but the fight for a fairer world was far from over. Maya descended the courthouse steps, feeling somewhat lighter, but not without sadness. She had fought, had stood up for her honor and dignity, and now she knew she would no longer face people like Mr. Smith alone. However, Maya also understood that this was just one of countless battles to overcome to bring real change to society. When she reached her car, Maya paused, her gaze drifting skyward. Memories of that day, the physical pain and the emotional trauma still lingered vividly in her mind. Though her car had been repaired, the scratches on her pride were wounds that wouldn't easily heal. For Maya, the hatred and discrimination she faced were not merely personal issues, but a reflection of a broader problem rooted in many aspects of daily life. In the weeks following the verdict, Maya tried to return to her routine, but thoughts of the trial and her confrontation with Mr. Smith remained ever present. She recalled the insults, the contemptuous look, and his arrogant attitude, all reminders of the harsh reality she and many others had to face simply because of their skin color. She remembered the stunned look on his face when the verdict was read and realized that to him, attacking and insulting others was something he believed he had the right to do, without consequences. One evening, Maya sat on her balcony, gazing at the city lights in the distance, letting her mind drift. She understood that while Mr. Smith's sentence was a start to justice, it couldn't erase the prejudice he and others like him harbored. His hateful actions weren't just the story of an individual, but reflected a part of society, a part she knew she had to learn to confront. Maya thought of the people who had inspired her, those who stood up for justice in the past and fought to build a fairer society. She realized that she, too, had a responsibility to do the same, not just for herself, but for those who couldn't speak up. She felt a call to be a voice for change, to help build a community where everyone is treated with respect, regardless of race or bias. This resolve became clearer every day. Maya began participating in nonprofit organizations, fighting for human rights and racial equality. She shared her story in hopes of raising awareness, encouraging empathy, and inspiring others to stand up for themselves. The public speaking engagements and workshops she attended gave Maya a sense that she was contributing to change, small but meaningful. One morning, after stepping out of a workshop, Maya noticed a young woman approaching her, taking her hand and saying, "Thank you for bravely sharing your story. It helped me realize I'm not alone." The woman's words were a tremendous encouragement, reminding Maya that what she was doing made an impact, giving her the motivation to continue her journey. As she got into her car and saw her reflection in the rearview mirror, Maya smiled. The woman in the mirror was no longer someone who felt weak or helpless in the face of discrimination and hatred. She was someone strong who had fought to regain her dignity for herself and others like her. The scars remained, but now they were the fuel for her continued fight to build a fairer world. Maya started her car, leaving the parking lot and blending into the bustling traffic. She knew that there were still battles ahead, but now she was ready to face them all, with determination and faith in her own worth. And so, this is the story of Maya, a journey filled with hardship, but also with the courage and determination to fight for justice and self-respect. Maya's story is a powerful reminder that even when faced with hatred, prejudice, or injustice, each of us has the right and the strength to stand up for ourselves. No one has the right to demean you simply because you are different, and sometimes one person's brave actions can inspire many others to speak up for themselves. Through this story, we hope that you will find the motivation to always persist and remain strong in any situation, knowing that justice, though it may be delayed, will always prevail if we are patient and determined. Let's build a fair and compassionate world together, where everyone is treated with respect. If you found this story meaningful and want to continue receiving similar content, please hit subscribe to follow the channel, and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss any of our future videos. Thank you for watching and supporting us.